His name is Joe Baker, a broken man whose dreams and ambitions have gone from his life faster than his youth. As Joe sits in his basement, he calls a home shining his shoes. He often reminisces about his broken life. He wonders how is it that he got to the position that he's in today. How did he go from being a young, youthful man with dreams and ambitions about being a great musician to just being a lowly janitor that no one cares about? Sometimes, Joe can't bear to look up at his past life through pictures. It pains him to look at his wife that he lost and the son he loved that she took away from him. The only other thing Joe has to remind him of them is matching bracelets he and his wife wore in devotion to each other. They were one of a kind. That was some years ago. As Joe goes on with his daily routine of his janitorial obligations around the school, his mind stays stuck in the past, never really concentrating on the present, because the present isn't where he's happy at anyhow. As he cleans up, Joe hears something today that made his soul move. Joe hasn't felt like this in a while. The sound seems to call to him. As Joe nears the door where he hears the music coming from, he begins to peer into the door. There, Joe sees a young man at the soundboard working on music. Joe sees this all the time, but this time it was different. Joe introduced himself to a young student and asked if he could add something to his work. The young man invited Joe to take a seat. As Joe and the boy sat there, they discussed the music together. For those few minutes, Joe was finally living in the present with his mind, soul, and body. Only once did Joe and the kid look at each other. That one look, however, was enough to make Joe feel like he had no business being there. For some reason, that young man's eyes made Joe feel his past again. Joe felt he had to go, and so without so much of a goodbye, he left. As he went back to the basement, he tried to go back to the routine of shining his shoes, but his shoes were already clean. He tried to throw some music on, but there was already a record in the player. Joe hasn't felt like this for a long time, but he didn't know why. As Joe sat in the basement, he looked up over the bracelet that meant so much to him. As he held it, that burn became even stronger. As he stood there, he realized that he had forgotten his broom in the room with the young man. Joe made his way back up to the room. As he walked back down the hallway, he walked this time with caution in his steps. When he got to the door, it was once again cracked. Joe peered in, and the young man was still sitting there, working on the music. He was about to enter until he noticed something on the boy's wrist. It was the bracelet he had given to his wife all those years ago. That bracelet was one of a kind. The only way the kid could have it is if Joe backed up away from the door slowly, still staring at the door. He now realizes who this young man is. Joe walked down the hallway, knowing that the young man was his son. Who knew?